Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered if what we learn in studies about people who don't believe in conspiracy theories tells us anything about the people who do? That is the big question this research paper dives into. You see, most studies about conspiracy theories get their participants from the general public. And here is the kicker: most people in those studies actually don't believe in conspiracy theories. So, how can we be sure that what we learn about these general samples applies to the people who are deep into believing in conspiracy theories? It's like trying to understand the experience of professional athletes by only interviewing casual joggers. This paper says we need to be more careful about how we jump from one group to the other. The researchers here are saying that when we study conspiracy theories, we often make too big assumptions that might be leading us astray. First, they call it interpretation generalizability. Basically, this means they assume that no matter where someone falls on the conspiracy belief spectrum, the meaning of a finding stays the same. For example, if they find a link between believing in a conspiracy and being more suspicious, they assume that link means the same thing for someone who just slightly suspects something versus someone who is utterly convinced. The second assumption is range generalizability. This is about the strength of the relationship. They assume that if they see a pattern in people who are only a little bit into conspiracy theories, that same pattern will hold true for people who are strongly into them. They're assuming the relationship just continues smoothly across the board. But here is the problem. The authors point to a really interesting area of research: people believing in contradictory conspiracy theories. For example, believing both that a historical event was staged and that it had a completely different, secret explanation that also happened. Studies used to find that people who believed in one conspiracy theory were also more likely to believe its opposite. So researchers thought, wow, conspiracy believers just can't keep their stories straight. They believe anything, even if it contradicts itself. This seemed to support the idea that conspiracy believers are irrational. But then, some new research, the kind these authors are talking about, showed something different. When they looked closely at the data, they found that the positive link between believing contradictory theories wasn't coming from the strong believers. Instead, it was mostly coming from people who were just a little bit unsure or on the fence. These people, statistically speaking, were more likely to say maybe to both conflicting ideas. But when you looked at the people who strongly believed in conspiracy theories, they were actually less likely to believe contradictory ones. This is a huge revelation. It shows that the range generalizability assumption is flawed. The relationship isn't a straight line. What holds true for someone mildly curious about a conspiracy theory is completely different for someone who is a true believer. The meaning changes as you move up the belief scale. And this also challenges the interpretation generalizability. The same positive number in a correlation can mean two completely different things. One, that people are consistently rejecting the official truth by embracing contradictory conspiracies, or two, that they are genuinely confused or open to many ideas without deep conviction. The interpretation of the finding changes depending on who you are measuring. So, what does all this mean for how we study conspiracy theories? It means we need to be way more cautious. Just because we see a pattern in a sample of mostly non-believers doesn't mean it applies to strong believers. The authors suggest we need to think more about what it means to agree or disagree on a scale. When someone says they neither agree nor disagree, what are they really saying? Are they truly undecided, or are they just finding the idea somewhat plausible without believing it wholeheartedly? They propose two ways to look at that middle ground. One is that it is just a neutral absence of opinion. The other, which they favor, is that it is a tentative agreement. It means they find the idea plausible, at least enough not to dismiss it outright. This distinction between plausibility and factuality is key. Plausibility is like saying that could happen. Factuality is saying that did happen. For low to moderate believers, their responses might mostly reflect perceptions of plausibility. But for strong believers, it's more about perceptions of factuality. They believe it's true. So, a link between a psychological trait and conspiracy beliefs might just mean that trait makes a conspiracy seem plausible to some people, not necessarily that it makes them believe it as a concrete fact. When it comes to range generalizability, the paper emphasizes that we need to actively check for nonlinear relationships. Imagine a graph. Instead of a straight line going up, it might go up, then flatten out, or even curve down. They suggest we should think about why a relationship might change for stronger believers. In the case of contradictory beliefs, it makes sense that while someone might be open to multiple plausible explanations, believing two contradictory things as factually true is logically harder to do. They also mention statistical tools that can help detect these nonlinear patterns, like looking for quadratic terms in regression models. It is about making sure the patterns we see in the mildly curious aren't just assumed to hold for the deeply convinced. The paper offers some ideas for how to get around these issues in future research. One is to use different kinds of scales, maybe ones that don't have a middle undecided option, or to offer a clear, I don't know option separate from the agree-disagree choices. This could help untangle true uncertainty from tentative agreement. Ultimately, the main takeaway is a call for caution. When we study conspiracy theories, we often run into the excess problem. It is hard to get strong believers into our studies. Because of this, we need to be really careful about generalizing findings from the majority of participants, who reject these theories, to the minority who deeply believe them. We need to question if a relationship means the same thing for everyone, and if the strength of that relationship stays consistent. The research on contradictory beliefs shows that these assumptions can fail us, leading us to misunderstand what's really going on in the minds of conspiracy believers. My take on this is that it is a really important reminder that our samples matter, and the way we interpret data from those samples is crucial. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking a finding applies universally, but this paper shows why that's a dangerous assumption when studying a complex and often stigmatized topic like conspiracy theories. It highlights the need for more sophisticated research designs that can actually capture the experiences of those who hold these beliefs more strongly without just projecting our findings from the less convinced onto them. Future research should definitely try to include diverse samples and use more nuanced measurement tools. So, what do you think? Does this change how you view research on conspiracy theories? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more deep dives into the fascinating world of psychology. Well, see you next time.